Hello everybody, I'm here by myself again without Mary in our final week, week 4 of the English as a Medium of Instruction for Academics MOOC. I'd just like to comment on some of the ideas that have come up and also some final thoughts just for the course as a whole and what I think you've brought to this course through your comments and through your engagement. And I'll start by saying thank you very much for those. The course by itself, or I think any MOOC, is lacking in value in terms of the videos and the information it provides. The real value comes from what you bring, especially in an area of education that's as wide as EMI or EME, as we said last time. So thank you very much for that. Some observations from this week, first of all. I'd like to say one of the things I found interesting is the different angles we're looking at things. And for example, I'll take stereotypes, where we have the idea that's pretty much agreed on, that we have to understand who our students are. That good teaching and being a good educator involves inquiry. It involves asking, who are our students? What is their experience? What is their expectation? What are they bringing to the learning environment that I should engage with as an effective educator? So that's a really important part. And stereotyping, particularly based on national or ethnic lines, is very problematic in that. It's answering the question before you've asked it, essentially. And it can be harmful. Another area, however, that's come up is the point that that we take comfort in the knowledge that we think we have about people and what we think those people believe or know or will do. So quite often you see that in even adult educational settings where people will sit with people who are similar to them or who look similar to them. So people often don't want to challenge themselves. They don't want to feel uncomfortable by sitting with people who are very different, where they don't know the rules. They don't know how they should behave. They don't want to worry that a joke they make is going to be interpreted negatively. So there's also this other side of stereotyping where we take comfort in talking to people and engaging with people who are similar to us in our minds. And I think the important message there is that in order to develop intercultural competence, in order to open our minds and understand that there is similarity in difference, in terms of like similar people can be different and different people can be similar to us, we don't really gain an intrinsic knowledge of that until we experience communicating with people from a range of different backgrounds. So we want to offer our students that opportunity to grow as people, but at the same time we have to be aware of discomfort. And I thought that was an interesting dynamic, to bring different ideas to that discussion. So have agreement, stereotyping is harmful, but also recognizing the social role of stereotyping and how knowledge that we think we have about other people is closely linked to our emotions and our feelings of anxiety or comfort when we deal with other people. So thank you very much for that. I thought that was really interesting. And connected to that is the role of the teacher. What does the teacher do when they're in their classroom? How much of an intervention should the teacher bring? So does the teacher say, I want you working together? Does the institution want to take responsibility for that and create policies that put certain students together with others? Or is it something that we want to encourage students to do autonomously? Do we want the students to be given freedom, but also to be encouraged to engage with other students who are different from them or with whom they haven't worked before? And I guess a lot of that will depend on context. How often do you see your students? What's the teacher-student relationship? what is the class atmosphere like in terms of students working together? What discipline are you working in? You know, there are lots of factors that mean some practices will work, other practices are almost destined to fail. So there's no one right way, but I think it's a really interesting discussion point that I think to be a good educator, you have to understand the contextual limitations. So what can you do and what can't you do with your identity and your role in this particular environment with the students who are in front of you. And again, that goes back to understanding who these students are. So I'd like to link that to Adina's point this week, that for her, a lot of what's been on the course is a discussion of what good educators are. So to be a good EMI or EME educator, you essentially have to be a good educator. And I'd like to agree with that point and think certainly there's nothing special about an EMI or EME situation which would be any different from being a good educator in any environment. But I'd like to emphasize as an overview of the course which elements we've brought to this discussion in order to compartmentalize what considerations you need to emphasize in our view and in terms of the conversations that have been taking place. So first of all is the role of English and communication. So what kind of English are you looking for? How do you encourage students to use the resources they have, whether they are considered the high status language forms socially, or whether they're simply tools to discuss content? How do you encourage development of language, development of communication, while also respecting the different language people bring to the classroom? And again, that links very closely to the themes of culture and identity that we've seen this week. Language difference exists because social difference exists. And that's really important to remember. If you prioritize one variety of language, you're actually prioritizing one variety of culture or of people. And I think that can have a very oppressive and discriminatory role when we use that in real life contexts. And it can silence the voices of some students, which really, we should be trying to encourage and respect. So that's my view. But again, context rule everything. And there are times when, as educators and trying to improve students' knowledge, awareness and development, we might have to take actions that we wouldn't socially. Socially, we might not correct a student's choice of word. You'd think, okay, someone's used the wrong word, but I'm going to let it go. If you're teaching in a particular discipline and that word is important, you might decide to make a correction and make an intervention. So again, we have to consider our actions within the context. That links to culture and identity. So another element where I think how we're looking at being a good educator is understanding culture and identity. And I think I use the words together because I think identity is really important. It's the individual interaction, the performance of self, using how you've been brought up, what values you have in interaction with your environment. Whereas culture is often seen as a more static thing that you have rather than something that you use and are constantly developing. But I think the question there is, what cultural elements that might harm your identity work with students, what of them exist within your materials, within your teaching, within your activities, and how you set them up? And I think this week we focused particularly on that. Another area is empathy. So I think we have to consider how we develop our own empathy, our understanding of others, our awareness of the anxieties, the opportunities, the barriers that exist for the people around us when we use English to teach. And also how we can develop empathy among our students. Because I think, when we talk about English medium education, we're often talking about international education. We're talking about people who are going to develop not just their knowledge of their content area, but their international identities, their ability to operate in an international field or to work with in multicultural and multilingual environments. And that involves much more than knowledge. It involves the skills and the personal characteristics to be able to engage internationally. And that involves empathy, a willingness to understand the person you're communicating with, to be aware of yourself and how you affect others, as well as being aware how these other people are affecting you, but understanding that your interpretation might not be right, or that their actions might be for a reason that you don't understand. So we don't leap to judgments or leap to negative evaluations of others. And finally, it's the recognition that everything we're talking about are embedded within practices. So we're talking about what we do and how we do it, and the complexity of that. Do the students understand why you're doing what you're doing? Do the students understand, your own background, your own motivations? Do they understand, who you are and what you bring to them? And often education has a way of kind of giving us a task, like teach students this content, and it can make educators feel quite powerless and quite nervous about delivering this content, when actually education generally is quite a positive area. It's an area where most people have something to give students. Very few people go into education lacking knowledge or lacking any ability to help people develop. The people on this MOOC are a classic example. People who are clearly intelligent, engaged, professional, trying to do their best for students, but sometimes lacking confidence or seeking further guidance of how to do it well. And then the question is, okay, do your students understand that? Do your students understand who you are, what you're doing, and why you're asking them to engage in the way that they are? And I think if that message is clear and that cooperation is evident, then teaching in any circumstance becomes much easier, because generally educators are positively trying to affect students and enhance students' ability and knowledge. And a big part of the fight in education is getting students to understand that, to perceive that, and to work with you in developing themselves. So I'd like to thank you very much. That's essentially the overview, but a lot of that, as I said, is coming from your comments. It's coming from what you're bringing to this course, which is really great to see. And I'd encourage you to please, continue the discussions. We have the Facebook group, and we also have the Future Learn platform, which is open for another couple of weeks. So please do reply to each other, engage with each other, take conversations on further. We will be around. We will be continuing to reply, comment, and like. And we are reading things in the background, and it's really interesting to see your views. So thank you very much, and I will see you on the course, and hopefully I will see you somewhere in the world of English medium education in future. So thank you very much, and thank you to Mary too, who's not sitting next to me, but maybe next time when the pandemic is over. So thank you again, and see you soon.